Wow. Breaking! Police officers are literally pulling a mob of far left pro Hamas protesters. They're really just lunatics away from this Democrat National Committee headquarters in DC last night. So this was kind of crazy. These police officers, they're literally pulling a mob apart of far left pro Hamas protesters. They're lunatics. And this was right outside the Democrat National Committee headquarters in Washington, D.C. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. You can see the protesters on Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and I'm there live every morning. We've got to watch this. Here we go. Take a listen. Wow. There's so much chaos going on. Somebody's on the ground. Oh gosh. This is just terrible. CNN, a hack reporter, she just tried to bait Vivek Ramaswamy. She tried to bait him into turning on Trump, really. And instead, Vivek Ramaswamy actually flipped the script on her and left her really speechless. It was kind of amazing to see this takedown of this CNN hack who tried to get Vivek Ramaswamy to flip on Donald Trump. He flipped the script on her, and you can physically see the shock, and she's just so bewildered that Vivek Ramaswamy wouldn't let her off of the ropes. I mean, she's bewildered that he did not bend the knee. So here I have it. I do want to play it here on the Morning Buzz. You can see it Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. Let's take a listen.
That language, they live like vermin. Do you believe that that is, as your Republican colleague Chris Christie has said, neo-Nazi rhetoric?
This is a classic mainstream media move. Pick some individual phrase of Donald Trump, focus on literally that word without actually interrogating the substance of what's at issue.
The word was chosen for a
middle of a cultural war in this country.
Well, you know what?
It's actually describing a series of behaviors. You have Antifa and other related groups that have been burning down cities for the last 3 years in this country.
Would you describe them as vermin?
Wildly violating the rule of law. We have an invasion on our southern border. We have millions of people crossing our southern border. Let's talk about the substance of why we have to recognize that we're not in ordinary times.
Would you use that language yourself?
The vocabulary of the vermin or not is not what's important. Well, I haven't used that language. So you can look at my track record on the campaign trail. I talk about the issues. We all talk about them differently. But what I'm not going to do is play some game of focusing on some word that somebody else said without ignoring entirely the substance of what we're actually talking about. A border crisis of historic proportion. Economic stagnation we haven't seen in 50 years. A national identity crisis and the loss of national pride in the next generation that's potentially existential for this country. Let's talk about our dependence on China. Today, we're actually talking about Xi Jinping, picking on Donald Trump's word vermin to talk about that status quo. You know what's vermin? What's running around San Francisco on a given day before Gavin Newsom cleaned it up on a dime to roll out the red carpet for Xi Jinping. If he could do that for Xi Jinping, he could have done it on an ordinary day. And yet we're here sitting talking not about the substance of that, but on one word that Donald Trump said in some speech in Miami. This is what's wrong with the mainstream media. Focus on the substance and let's have an actual policy debate rather than talking to a presidential candidate instead of the policy substance of what's actually going on in the country, picking on some word that Donald Trump said on a certain day and asking me for comment on it. Give me a break.
Wow. That was a take down by Vivek Ramaswamy. It was a couple of minutes long, folks, but it was so worth it. I love him calling it out and refusing to to be interrupted too. That takes a skill. He was really just pushing to finish his point, and she wouldn't let him finish his point. But he didn't bend the knee. He refused to be interrupted. You can see the defeat on the CNN hack's face. You can see it all over her face towards the end of, Vivek really just taking her to school. He has quickly become the voice of the intellectual right. He's able to communicate right wing policy in a very digestible way, even when the topics are complicated. He's extremely helpful to the America First movement. Vivek Ramaswamy is. I think he's helpful. 309 451 9299. What are we going to be talking about this morning? Well, we've got to talk about the GOP senator. I told you I'd talk about it this morning if I had some time. I do want to talk about this because it's hilarious. He's a senator and he stands up to fight this Teamsters boss. He's the president of Teamsters, a union boss. And this was all during a Senate hearing. Yes. In this insane video, the senator challenges the Teamster boss to a fight. Then I've got to talk about Nikki Haley. I know we woke up this morning with Vivek Ramaswamy. Now we have to talk about Nikki. But she is destroyed her presidential campaign, specifically when she laid out plans for your social media account, and she's doing it in the name of national security. That's what she's doing, and she wants to monitor your social media account. That's essentially what she wants to do. She just said the quiet part out loud, folks. And then later, this is a big story that kind of got brushed under the rug, and I want to talk about it because 300 Jewish marchers, they never made it. I talked about the 200,000 plus people who were in Washington, D.C., and they never made it, these Jewish marchers. And this can only be described as deliberate and malicious. There were actions taken by bus drivers on the tarmac there. They got in, they flew in these 300 Jewish marchers, and the bus drivers didn't take them to the rally in Washington, D.C. They were left stranded on the tarmac, okay, at this DC airport. And they had to return home without even exiting the plane because there's rules about you walking out onto the tarmac. You can't walk out onto the tarmac. And they were stranded there at the airport, 300 Jewish people, because these bus drivers refused to take them to the march. So let's get into it here. I got time for one story before I got to cut to break. But like I said, find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Let's get into it today. We had a wild day in Congress a couple of days ago, and it all kind of started with this bumping in the hallway. Now, I don't know who bumped whom, if it was an elbow, if it was a shove, if it was a sucker punch to the kidneys, a shot to the kidneys, if it was a sucker punch to the face, who knows? Because the mainstream media, when they covered this, it was all over the place. I mean, headlines saying that Kevin McCarthy shoved Tim Burchett. Tim Burchett is a member of Congress. Matt Gaetz has officially filed a formal ethics complaint against Kevin McCarthy. Now, Tim Burchett voted to oust Kevin McCarthy. I don't know if that's what this scuffle in the hallway was all about. But it was a wild day anyway, because Kevin McCarthy was accused of either elbowing, shoving, scuffling, insulting, or punching Tim Burchett. I don't know which one. There's no video, and the mainstream media, they're a bunch of hacks, and they can't get it right for some odd reason. So anyway, so that happened. But if you thought that was a breach of decorum, where we had Kevin McCarthy elbowing, scuffling with somebody in the hallway, wait until you hear about this one. This one's wild. Look, when someone says anytime, any place, you would think that means anytime and any place. But of course, we can't expect the Teamsters president, his name is Sean O'Brien, to put his money where his mouth is. Okay, so a physical altercation almost broke out in the Senate hearing on the Senate floor here as a GOP senator. His name is Markwayne Mullen. Now, he almost broke out into a physical altercation with Sean O'Brien, who's the Teamsters president. He's a union guy. Okay, so this almost happened. They were trash talk, or well, I should say Sean O'Brien was trash talking this GOP lawmaker for several months on social media. And Sean Mullen, he just, or Senator Mullen, he just, repeats what Sean O'Brien has been saying about him on social media. And he's just had enough of it, this senator. So I want to play this here for you because it's important. Take a listen to what the Teamsters president, Sean O'Brien, said about Mullen, the senator, here on the Morning Buzz. Here we go.
Like he's self-made. Sir, I wish he was in the truck with me when I was building my plumbing company. Myself and my wife was running the office because I sure remember working pretty hard and long hours. Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big
No,
guy.
no, stop it.
Is that your
All right.
solution, every
Hold it. No, sit down. Sit down.
Okay.
You know, you're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond? Mr.
Hold
Chairman?
it. Hold it. If
Hold
we
on.
can, no,
This is
I have
what
the
he
mic.
said.
I'm sorry.
This is
Hold
what
it.
he said.
You'll have your time.
Okay.
Can I respond?
Oh, no, you can't. This is a hearing.
Oh, that is hilarious, folks. I've got to break down what that was all about here coming up in just a little bit. I've got to take a quick break, but as you heard, there was almost a physical altercation breakout in a Senate committee hearing, and Senator Mark Wayne Mullen is his name. Now, I guess I didn't know this prior to doing the story this morning, but I did some more digging. He's a former MMA fighter. The senator is. He's a former MMA fighter, and he just tried to fight somebody in the United States Senate committee hearing here, and that's pretty incredible. I'll break down everything you heard there coming up next on the Morning Buzz. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Good morning. It's 6:18. Have you got your cup of coffee? Wake up. Good morning. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. That would help us out. And when we come back, I'm going to be unpacking Bernie Sanders trying to get in the middle of this fight, this possible physical altercation that could have happened in this Senate hearing, the Senate committee hearing here, where Senator Mullen, he's a Republican, he's a GOP lawmaker, and he's been constantly just attacked by this Teamster boss, Sean O'Brien. Now, Sean O'Brien and Mullen, they get into it on the Senate floor or in the Senate meeting, Senate committee meeting, a hearing. And it is wild how, Bernie Sanders tries to get into the middle of this. Look, I think that it's about time that things like this start to happen. I mean, the hostilities are going to continue, and men, they need to have these convictions. So, I mean, men used to have convictions that were so firmly believed, and you used to firmly believe in your ideology that you would go and you would fight physically to protect this conviction that you've got. So, we're going to chat about it here on the Morning Buzz. Text in at 309-451-9299. Wow. That was an incredible video. I mean, insane. So we've got Sean O'Brien and this senator. Um, Senator Mullen, uh, he has some history with the Teamster boss, Sean O'Brien. And Senator Bernie Sanders, he was kind of forced to try to keep the peace between the two. There was almost a physical altercation that broke out in the Senate committee hearing. This GOP lawmaker, Mark Wayne Mullen, he has constantly been trash talked by this guy, this Teamster boss, Sean O'Brien. And he had enough of it. And he said, you know what? Look, it's a time, it's a place. You said anytime, any place on social media, and this is a time or place. So get your butt up out of the seat and fight me. So I've talked a little bit about Sean O'Brien and Mullen's history and their bickering before. But for just a little bit of background, the two went at it in March at another hearing over O'Brien's salary compared to that of his union members. Okay, so he's a union boss, and Sanders intervened in that argument as well. But Mullen began reading off a series of tweets from O'Brien, Sean O'Brien, in this last Senate committee hearing, and he challenged him to a fight uh, earlier this year, actually. So this isn't the first time that Mullen has challenged him to a fight. Because here's the thing: Sean O'Brien is taking to social media and saying things like anytime, any place. I mean, I love it. Here's what Mullen told O'Brien in yesterday or 2 days ago, I think it was the hearing. He says, "Sir, this is a time, this is a place. You want to run your mouth, we're two consenting adults. We can finish it right here. We can be two consenting adults and finish it right here. Let's fight." Okay. Now, O'Brien said that he could take the former MMA fighter anytime in any place. And, O'Brien, he then responds like, "Okay, let's do it now." And he goes, "You want to do it right now?" That's what Mullen says. And then O'Brien says, "Oh, I'd love to do it right now." Then Mullen says, "Well, get up out of your chair. Get your butt up." And then O'Brien says, "You get your butt up, big guy." And um, Mullen actually stood up out of his chair and was ready to go. He was actually ready to go over to where O'Brien was sitting. He was taking off his wedding ring to go fight this guy. And Sanders, of course, he intervened and he said, "Stop it, stop it, stop it. Sit down," in very Bernie Sanders fashion. And, in case it was not clear, O'Brien had said this is what he wanted. And Sanders just wasn't having it. Okay. Sean O'Brien, the Teamsters boss, the union boss, he said he wanted this. Although the described Democrat socialist, and he describes himself as a socialist, Bernie Sanders appointed himself as the referee here to put an end to the fight. The verbal altercation continued. Okay, so despite the socialist Bernie Sanders trying to intervene here. There was still a verbal altercation that happened. O'Brien, and you didn't hear it in the video. Sean O'Brien said, "You challenged me to a cage match, and you're acting like a 12-year-old." And Sanders said, "We're not going to talk about physical abuse. We're not here to talk about physical abuse." And Sanders, he intervenes, and then Mullen, he points a finger actually at Sean O'Brien and called him a thug, which is exactly what O'Brien is. And then O'Brien called Mullen disrespectful. The two kept at it. Sanders kept trying to interject here, and I'm just kind of quarterbacking this thing here, folks, and trying to tell you what happened in this hearing because there's a point here. The hostilities are going to continue despite the pleas from Bernie Sanders. And sometimes we just got to have these fights. Okay. More of this. I'm okay with this. More of it. We await the day that Sean O'Brien, the tough guy talk, comes to fruition because this guy he's rabid. He is sitting there saying that he wants to fight this senator on social media. Okay. Well, let's settle it then. We'll have to say we can settle this. Men used to have convictions. So I want to tell a little story about Andrew Jackson. Then I got to cut to break. But he's U.S. president, and he was crazy cool. So Andrew Jackson was the biggest dueler of all time. I mean, he was challenging people to duels, and I mean, that's just the way it was back in the day. People would challenge each other to duels, and men would literally kill each other over their convictions. I'm not saying that we should go back to those times, okay? But if this guy says that he wants to fight him on social media, okay. You said anytime, any place, let's do it. We're two consenting adults. Let's fight it out. I would probably watch the Senate committee hearings way way more often, right? If this was going on. But no, let's fight it out. And Andrew Jackson, so he was not very liked by people because he stood by by his beliefs, and he had convictions as a man, and he was willing to fight and to kill for those convictions. He was alpha male. He was alpha. And there was this time where somebody wanted to assassinate Andrew Jackson, and they brought two guns to this building. I gotta look up where the building was at, but they brought two guns. This guy, he was like, "Okay, Andrew Jackson is a really tough guy to kill. I'm gonna have to bring two guns." He brings two guns. The first gun misfires. He pulls out the second gun. The second gun misfires. Guess what Andrew Jackson did? He goes over there and he beats this guy with a cane, then turns around, and Andrew Jackson builds a statue of himself right outside this building where this altercation happened. Like, that's alpha male. Okay. I'm sick and tired of beta stuff and Bernie Sanders being a beta. Let these guys fight it out. He's saying he wants to fight. Sean O'Brien does. He says he wants to fight. He said anytime, any place. Well, sir, it is a time and it is a place. Let's just get into it. Speaking about fighting. One thing that I wanted to talk about today in sports where biology gives men who went through puberty as males an advantage over women, combat sports, I think, is at the top of that list. All of the sports where biology gives men an advantage because they go through something called puberty as males and they have incredible muscle mass in comparison to women. That's just a biological fact. They don't even have to like lift or anything like that. You guys, like when you go through puberty, it's just you guys have muscle. I mean, that's just the way it goes. You get muscle definition. And, out of all of the sports where biology gives men advantages because they go through puberty, combat sports is at the top of the list. Okay. You wouldn't stand by and watch some dude punch a girl in the face. You just wouldn't do that. But if the dude identifies as a girl and says he's a girl, we're supposed to accept it in the name of equity, tolerance, inclusion, and all that gay stuff. So we are going to talk about that here on the Morning Buzz because this woman, she was one female Canadian boxer and she took a stand and she said no. Yesterday, I talked about a pool player who walked away from a pool match and she just had enough of it. She said, you know what? Nope, I'm not. More women need to do this. this Canadian boxer, this female, she took a stand. She said, "No, I'm not going to let that guy punch me in my face." And good for her. I'm back next. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. If you guys are watching, go ahead and smash the like button. And share this out with your friends. Just do it. Just share it out with your friends. Like the program. And you know what? If somebody wants to like shame you or get upset with you because you follow Cities 92.9 and subscribe to content like this, screw them. Okay. So like the video. We are going to be talking about Katia, that's her name, Bisonette, that's her name. She is the Golden Glove champion, would have been if she would have probably fought this guy and won, but there was no way she was going to win against this opponent because this opponent of hers was born a male and was competing as a she. He was born a he and he wants to compete as a female boxer. Okay, that's just so wrong. We're going to chat a little bit about that. Plus, this story kind of went under the radar and got brushed under the rug, and I think it's very important that we remember that this happened. This will go down as a stain in this nation's history. So some Jewish folk, about 300, they got together and they said, "You know what? We're going to go to Washington D.C. and we're going to march." So they go down to Washington D.C. via a plane, and they, worked out the logistics where they were going to go from the plane from the tarmac and they were going to be bussed out to Washington D.C. to attend the rally. Well, it turns out those 300 Jewish members or Jewish people did not make it to the large support Israel rally that happened in Washington D.C. Like I said yesterday, it was about 200,000 people, and they never made it out there because some bus drivers did not want to cart Jewish people around. They didn't want to drive the Jewish people around, which is extremely anti Semitic. This is going to be a stain on this nation's history. And nobody's talking about it. I didn't see a whole lot about this specific event in the news, where these Jewish people, I mean, what can only be described as deliberate and malicious, the actions of some of these bus drivers, where they left these Jewish people stranded on the tarmac in an airport or in this plane at this DC airport, and they had to return home without even exiting the plane, because you can't leave the plane, you can't walk out onto the tarmac. Um, Without that bus being there, and I mean, it was just wild to see this, and this is gonna be a stain on our nation's history. Joe Biden, he mumbles his way around, APEC with his BFF, President Xi Jinping, so that happened where the streets were lined with red and yellow in San Francisco, and if you were to just watch the video, you would think that this was China, that San Francisco was were the streets of China. But nope, that was not the case. That was actually San Francisco, and he got a warm welcome in San Francisco with a bunch of flags, Chinese flags. I mean, China, uh, California, Chinafornia. That is an actual thing. I can't believe I can't believe that this is the United States now. We've got red and yellow all up and down these streets in San Francisco, and President Xi Jinping was just chumming it up with President Joe Biden. And make no mistake, this is not like Xi Jinping visiting Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago in 2017. You want to know why? Because in 2017, we were a country that had the upper hand. We were economically just powerhouses in 2017. We had it together, right? And now we don't. And what Xi Jinping is doing, he's trying to survey out and he's trying to understand how easy it would be to take over the United States. He's already doing it. He's buying up farmland. He's building out his companies here, Goshen, the battery plant in Manteno, Illinois. Uh, and people aren't happy about that because guess what, folks? If we start if we become, and we are becoming China, I mean, China is going to be here in America. We are going to be China. We might even have to speak the language. Do you want to learn a language at this point in your life, a new language? Well, President Xi Jinping might demand that you learn Mandarin Chinese. And I don't want to live in an America where I'm forced to learn a language that I don't want to learn. But he might just do it. He might just do it. I'll be back. Wow. The CNN hack. I got to play this because this is absolutely insanity. How the CNN hack just tried to bait Vivek Ramaswamy into turning on Donald Trump. They're doing it again. They're taking words that President Donald Trump says, and they're going to try to call him a racist. They're going to try to call him a dictator and Hitler. Yes, Hillary Clinton actually said that Trump was like Hitler. But Vivek Ramaswamy, he did not let this CNN hack get away with it. He actually held her feet to the fire. He flipped the script on her and said, "Look, lady, uh, why aren't you talking about the issues?" And he flipped the script on her. She's shocked. She's left shocked. You can see it all over her face. She's bewildered. And this was on live TV. This was pure fire from Vivek Ramaswamy. I want to play it here really quick. And then I do want to get into this topic about uh, this 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 boxer. So this boxer, she actually had to fight this transgender opponent of hers, but she didn't wind up going through with it because she didn't want to get punched in the face by a guy. She's a female Canadian boxer, and she took a stand and she said, "No, I'm not going to let that guy punch me in the face." Men have a physical advantage over women in sports just in general, and when it comes to combat sports, it's definitely at the top of the list. You wouldn't sit by and watch a dude just completely punch a girl in the face. You just wouldn't do it. But if if a guy identifies as a girl, we're totally cool with it because it's in the name of equality, equity, tolerance, and all that gay stuff. We're fine with that. That in just a minute. But first, let's talk about Vivek Ramaswamy just just totally destroying the CNN hack. Here we go.
That language, they live like vermin. Do you believe that that is, as your Republican colleague Chris Christie has said, neo-Nazi rhetoric?
This is a classic mainstream media move. Pick some individual phrase of Donald Trump, focus on literally that word without actually interrogating the substance of what's at issue.
The word was chosen for a reason.
We are in the middle of a cultural war in this country.
The word was chosen for a reason.
It's actually describing a series of behaviors. You have Antifa and other related groups that have been burning down cities for the last 3 years in this country.
Would you describe them as vermin?
Violating the rule of law. We have an invasion on our southern border. We have millions of people crossing our southern border. Let's talk about the substance of why we have to recognize that we're not in ordinary times.
Would you use that language yourself?
The vocabulary of the vermin or not is not what's important. Well, I haven't used that language. So you can look at my track record on the campaign trail. I talk about the issues. We all talk about them differently. But what I'm not going to do is play some game of focusing on some word that somebody else said without ignoring entirely the substance of what we're actually talking about. A border crisis of historic proportion. Economic stagnation we haven't seen in 50 years. A national identity crisis and a loss of national pride in the next generation that's potentially existential for this country. Let's talk about our dependence on China. Today, we're actually talking about Xi Jinping, picking on Donald Trump's word vermin to talk about that status quo. You know what's vermin? What's running around San Francisco on a given day before Gavin Newsom cleaned it up on a dime to roll out the red carpet for Xi Jinping. If he could do that for Xi Jinping, he could have done it on an ordinary day. And yet we're here sitting talking not about the substance of that, but on one word that Donald Trump said in some speech in Miami. This is what's wrong with the mainstream media.
I love it. Vivek Ramaswamy just absolutely destroying the CNN hack. I know it was a little bit long, folks, but oh, man, I just like Vivek Ramaswamy more and more. He's calling it out. He's refusing to get interrupted. That's a big part of this. He wants to finish that point, and you can see the defeat on her face towards the end there. And Vivek Ramaswamy, he just schooled her. He's quickly becoming the voice of the intellectual right. He's able to communicate right-wing policies and in a very digestible way. That's important too, because a lot of the topics can be very complicated. And I think he's extremely helpful in the America First movement. 2028, Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm here for it. He's pretty cool. I don't know if I would vote for him. Like I said, I'm a Christian conservative, and in that order. So I will not be voting for a president who is not a Christian. He is Hindu, just because I believe that the values. I'm a Christian conservative first. You have to be Christian. You have to be a conservative in order for me to vote for you. So I do want to talk about this, where we've got this woman. She's a female boxer, and like I said, all sports get men have a physical advantage over women. I'm saying that as a woman. It is not in any way insulting to me to admit that men have a physical advantage. They go through something called puberty and they gain muscle definition and muscle mass in a very different way than women do. That's just a biological fact. And combat sports, definitely at the top of the list, where men have a physical advantage. You wouldn't want to stand by and watch a woman get punched in the face by a dude. But yet, if that dude says he identifies as a girl, we're just supposed to accept it in the name of equality, inclusion, and blah, blah, blah. Now, one female Canadian, she's a Canadian boxer, she took a stand and she said, no. She said, no, I'm not going to let this guy punch me in my face. Her name is Katia Bissonnette. And she was set to fight in the 2023 Golden Glove Championship in Canada. Now, an hour before her fight, she learned that her opponent was born a he and is now competing as a she. And she learned this just 1 hour before she was supposed to fight in this championship. And she withdrew from the championship in Quebec, Canada, after learning that she was going to fight this trans-identified male. So Katia, she told Redex News that she was ready to go until an hour before the fight, when the manager found out via text message that her female opponent was not born that way, that he was actually born a dude. Maya Walmsley. That's the guy's name, Maya. I don't know what his real name is, but he goes by the name Maya. And there's very limited information on this guy. He has no history of fighting against women in Canadian tournaments. However, Maya is Australian and moved to Canada just 2 years ago. The sick part, Maya would have boxed as a man in Australia. So he moved to Canada to box women, because they allow it there in Canada. Now, he would have had to box as a man if he remained in Australia. That's why he moved to Canada, folks. He moved there so that way he could beat up on women, because he's a psycho, I'm sure. But Katia, the Canadian female boxer, she put her safety first and she dropped out. So then she quotes this study and she refers to this 2020 study about strength. So according to the study, a male's blow is 163% more impactful than a woman's. Wow. Even adjusted for weight. Okay, now this was a 2020 study. It was about strength and it was published at the University of Utah by some researchers. And that group studied the weakest man, and they said the weakest man remains physically superior to the strongest woman. Women shouldn't have to bear the physical and psychological risks brought on by a man's decisions regarding his own personal life and identity. She said, keep men out of female sports. And when you have a hormonal profile and when you have the capabilities of a man, plus the bone density and just your overall muscle that has been built up over a lifetime of being a man, it gives you a ton of different advantages over girls in fighting, specifically boxing. I don't box anymore. I took a couple of classes. I like to hit the bag when I go to the gym. I just don't have time for it anymore. But there is no way that I could take a guy in a fight. Trans or not, a guy fighting a girl isn't competition, it's assault. And this Katia should have never been put in this position where she had to worry about her well-being. And folks, she's lucky that her manager got that text message, because had had the manager not gotten that text message that said, hey, the female fighter is actually a male, had she not gotten that text message, she might not have dropped out of that championship and her orbital bones might be crushed today. So she was very lucky that she got that text when she did, the manager of Katia. But look, she sacrificed a lot. She probably trained and dedicated her life to become a fighting champion. And this guy pulled it all away for pulled the rug out from under her. Pulled the rug out from under her, and she couldn't compete in this competition. And look, she shouldn't have been the one who pulled out of this competition. It should have been the guy. He shouldn't have been there. I do want to take a break. I am going to be getting to these 300 Jewish marchers. They never made it to DC. This is a stain on this country's history. This specific story, I think we just kind of brushed over it. Definitely the mainstream did. But this was a deliberate and malicious uh, these were deliberate and malicious actions taken by some bus drivers, and they left Jewish people stranded on the tarmac in a plane at the DC airport, at this DC airport, and they had to return home without even exiting the plane. This is sad. I'll be back next. Good morning, folks. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. I'd greatly appreciate it if you could. Yeah, let's get into some of your comments. Thanks in part to the fact that most popular politician in the political party openly mimics the language of Hitler. Oh boy, Larry. Promises to throw his opponents in jail. Blah 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 blah. Fill camps with immigrants. He wants to expel from the country. Oh boy. Your rhetoric here, man. GOP officials are starting to favor the words and deeds of in your face fascism as their political party or as their party's main message and deliverables. Well, let's unpack that here, Larry. So you say that the GOP is starting to favor words and deeds of in your face fascism, and you have an issue with Donald Trump promising to throw his opponents in jail. So Donald Trump is just merely speaking about throwing these people in jail. You want to know why he's talking about throwing these people in jail? It's because they're throwing him in jail. They're actually doing it. Donald Trump at this point has just said that he is willing to throw people in jail who are weaponizing the government against those of political dissent. And if you don't believe me, Larry, check out the movie Police State. I really highly encourage you to check that movie out. I'm just going to give you one example from Police State, okay? His name was Matt. I forget his last name. January 6th. January 6th, he goes and he just walks around the Capitol. There's video footage of this, okay? And it's timestamped. And this is just evidence, okay? Where Matt goes into the Capitol. He's there for about 12 minutes. And you can see that he's pointing at things in the rotunda. He stays within the rotunda. He actually stays within the ropes of the rotunda where tourists go and they go check out the Capitol and go check out the artifacts there. Now, Matt leaves the Capitol on January 6th, just 12 minutes after 12 minutes of him being inside, he leaves. Cell phone data shows that he's gone, and he actually leaves DC shortly after leaving the Capitol. And gosh, this is just going to be a tough story to get through here, Larry, but stick with me. Matt, he was charged with trespassing at first. He was looking at about 6 months or so because he trespassed, okay? He didn't destroy property. He didn't hurt anybody. He just went in when he wasn't supposed to, okay? And Matt was charged with trespassing, and he was looking at about 6 months. Then the prosecution, they try a terrorism charge, and now he's looking at about 20 to life. Okay, with this new terrorism charge that they tack on to the trespassing charge. This is weaponization of the government. This was simply a tactic to try to politicize January 6th by the prosecution. They weaponized their prosecution, their prosecutor role against Matt, and that was just not right. So guess what happened to Matt? He killed himself. He hung himself when he found out that he was going to be serving 20 years in prison, and he's just said, I can't do that. He had accepted 6 months for his trespassing. Okay, he knew he was wrong. He was going to plead guilty to it for going inside of the Capitol when he wasn't supposed to, which it's besides the point. I shouldn't even have to remind you, Larry, that that's the people's Capitol. We pay for that building, and I don't even know how you can trespass when that building should be a public building, and is paid for by Matt himself, um, and by you and by me. We should have access to that building all of the time. But that's besides the point. They weaponized this prosecutor against Matt to send a political message, and he wound up dead because of it. And Donald Trump is sick of it. He's sick of people who do that to people, and they should answer for their crimes of weaponizing their role in government. And folks, like I said, Donald Trump is just saying that he's going to hold these people accountable. The people who killed Matt, who are responsible for killing Matt, and the people, he's just saying that they're trying to throw him actively into prison. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hey, text me at 309-451-9299. We've got so much to get to today. I will be getting to some of your comments. Larry, he is on the YouTube stream, and he's got a comment here, and I'm going to address some of it. He says, that the GOP and the party, they are starting to favor the words and deeds of in-your-face fascism as their party's main message and deliverables. So he's saying that the GOP they're fascists and that they are for the message of fascism. And then he says that a party openly mimics the language of Hitler, that the Republican Party openly mimics the language of Hitler, and they promise to throw he promises to throw his opponents in jail. Boy. So I was telling Larry a little bit, Donald Trump has come out and said that, look, if you have weaponized the government against the United States people and against the people, and they have, just watch the movie Police State. If you have done that, then you need to answer for your crimes. You are taking your role in government and you are weaponizing it against the citizenry, and that is wrong. And he says, hey, I'm going to throw you into jail, or I'm going to make you pay for your crimes of weaponizing your role in government against the citizenry. And Larry, they're the ones who are threatening to throw him in jail. They're not even threatening to throw him in jail. They are trying to throw their political opponents in jail right now. That's what the Democrat Party is doing, and that's what they've done. Okay, so Democrats have taken conservatives and they have thrown them into jail. Just look at the J6ers, and I was explaining Matt's story. Matt, look up his story. He's a J6er. I forget his last name. He was in the Capitol on January 6th. Yes, he trespassed, sure. Let's besides the fact, let's not talk about how we, the people, actually pay for the building that he was in, and how Matt was actually funding that building for its existence. But anyway, so he trespasses into the building, and he's in the rotunda. There's video of this. There's evidence, time-stamped. It shows that Matt was in that building for not but 12 minutes, and he was pointing at artifacts in the Capitol, in the rotunda, as a tourist. He stayed within the ropes. He didn't break anything. He didn't even leave the ropes. Okay, his crime was trespassing. Okay, so he got 6 months for that, but the prosecutor comes back and tacks on a terrorism charge, and now he's looking at 20 to life. Matt then kills himself, hangs himself, because he doesn't want to serve 20 years. So he kills himself. The prosecutor weaponized his role as a prosecutor against Matt and against all J6. He was politicizing J6, and he was really just strong-arming Matt with these charges. And the prosecution, I'm going to get to this here. I got to talk about it at the top of the hour. The prosecution even admitted that, Larry. So you tell me who the fascists are. I'll be back. Trump is not Matt. See, that's where you don't understand, Larry. Trump isn't Matt. You're right. But Matt was there attending the rally of where he wanted to go see President Donald Trump. And the people who did that to him and who tacked on all of these charges, which subsequently caused him to kill himself, those people are the fascists. Okay. Those people weaponized their role against a citizen. And Donald Trump is saying that is wrong and that he will be throwing people in jail who did that to other people because he is running for president and he's a leader and he can do that, where he can throw those people in jail for their crimes. That should be a crime where a prosecutor, and I didn't even finish my story, Larry. The prosecutor comes out and says to Matt's aunt, and this is all recorded, this is evidence, okay, comes out and says this to the aunt, that if Matt would have just waited, those charges would have never stuck. So there you have it. The prosecutor who put those charges on Matt even admitted that that was a bit far-fetched. It probably wouldn't have stuck, and if he would have just waited. What? So that's what you don't understand. Trump is just in the way. They want to do this to you, to me, and Larry. I get it. You're a Democrat. You think that you're safe. You're not. Okay. It's only a matter of time before they come after you. Okay. And they're only going after people like Matt because Matt subscribes to or voted for or wanted to go see Donald Trump at a rally. They did that to Matt because they wanted to go see Donald Trump at a rally speak as the president of the United States. Okay, so Trump is not Matt. Trump is above the law. I don't know what you're talking about. He's not above the law, clearly, because he's got how many indictments? I mean, they're looking to throw this guy into prison. What do you mean he's above the law? He is he's not above the law. In fact, the law is being used against him in this weird political warfare that they've got going on. And then you're going to talk about the Republicans who testified against Trump, not one Democrat. Look, I mean, regimes are uniparty, okay? The Nazi Germany, that was uniparty. I don't know what to tell you. So, yeah, it's just MAGA cult. Attack the truth with propaganda. What propaganda am I telling you about? I mean, these are just conspiracy theories. I just told you what happened to Matt. I told you that the prosecutor came out and said that those charges wouldn't have stuck if he would have just waited a little bit. Then why'd you charge him with it? Right? I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You can't make up that Pastor Stephen Lee, an Illinois pastor here, is now being indicted alongside President Donald Trump. And it's not about Trump. You've got this Trump in your head, dude. You got to get him out of there. It's not really about Trump. It's about the people who voted for the guy and who wear Trump hats or wear political merchandise or, wear MAGA Make America Great Again 2024 t-shirt. It's about those people. Okay. They don't like that. And they're actively. So Pastor Stephen Lee, he's an Illinois pastor. What was his crime? All he did was knock on a door, and they're looking at, he's 71 years old, and he could possibly be facing 90 years in prison. He's going to die in there because he knocked on a door. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't threaten anybody. He didn't even say anything to Ruby Freeman. He knocked on Ruby Freeman's door. And she didn't even answer the door. That the cops came, and then all of a sudden he's charged with these indictments that could lead to a conviction. And I mean, this prosecutor Fannie Willis, she's really going after him. I mean, she's got all kinds of felony charges against this guy for knocking on a door. That's it. That's all he did. He knocked on her door, didn't have any contact with her, never said a word to her, never even met her. And they're trying to say, oh, he intimidated her by knocking on the door. Are you serious right now? Because there's so many journalists in this country over the years, what they used to do, and I've done it. I'd knock on people's doors. I mean, for example, the mass shooting, right? That took place here in Normal. I went to go interview the people who saw it happen, and I knocked on doors. That's what you do when you go and petition and get your petitions signed. I mean, politicians do it every day. They go and knock on doors and get their petition signatures. If we are going to criminalize knocking on a door and criminalize it in such a way that is exaggerated, we are really in it. And we're in for it here in America. And, you don't understand that this isn't about Donald Trump. This is not about Trump. This is not about Trump being above the law. I don't know what the heck you're talking about, because this is about America. This is about the United States citizens. This is about the citizenry being attacked by the government. And there's one guy who says that that's not okay. All right. Show me where MAGA Republicans made somebody kill themselves in their garage. Show me where a Republican prosecutor tacked on charges that weren't going to stick. Show me the Republican who did that. They're not the party of fascism, you idiot. Good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Yes, I'm getting a little heated over here on the stream. 309-451-9299. You can always text me and see me live in studio. That's Rumble, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's Cam Peterson 99. Before we took the break, I was telling you guys a little bit about Matt's story. So Matt, like I said, he was a J6er. He went into the Capitol. He was really acting as a tourist. And we have evidence of this. I mean, we have video footage with timestamps that show that he was in the Capitol for 12 minutes. 12 minutes. And he stayed within the ropes. He was pointing at things in the rotunda like a tourist. Was he supposed to be there? I don't know. I mean, that's even you could argue that he could have been there. I mean, the Capitol, where people stormed the Capitol, not not Matt. He just walked in. You could argue that he could have been there or should have been able to stay there because this is the people's house. I mean, this is the people's capital. We pay for it. You, me, Matt, we all pay for that capital to exist. It wouldn't exist without our funding or without our funding it. So Matt goes in and he just kind of points at things for about 12 minutes and then he leaves. Then cell phone data, we know that he left Washington, D.C. shortly after leaving the Capitol. So he was going to get charged with about 6 months, or he was going to have to serve about 6 months, and he was going to plead guilty to trespassing. Well, guess what the prosecutor does? The prosecutor comes back and he says, you know what? We're going to charge you with terrorism, and we're going to tack on another 20 or so years, 20 to life. This guy starts freaking out. I mean, imagine being told today that you are going to have to serve 20 years, okay, for simply trespassing. And he said, I couldn't do it. And what happened was he hung himself and killed himself. The prosecutor later calls up Matt's aunt, Matt's family member. And the aunt is told by the prosecutor, and I'm quoting the aunt here, and this is, I mean, evidence. She wrote this down. The time date that she talked to the prosecution who was prosecuting Matt. The prosecutor says, well, if Matt would have just waited, those charges wouldn't have stuck. Why'd you charge him with it? I'll tell you why. They weaponized the government against the citizenry in this January 6th thing. He took his role and he was on some sort of weird fascist power trip, and he wanted to make a political statement and he wanted to throw Matt in jail for 20 years, or at least say that he was going to try to throw Matt into jail for 20 years. So that way he could say he had no intention of actually having Matt serve out that 20 years because he knew it wasn't going to stick, but he charged him with it anyway. What? And, it just bothers me. It bothers me when there's people and they're like, oh, Republicans are fascist. Republicans are fascist. MAGA cults. They attack the truth. That's the truth. What I just told you about Matt, that's the truth. There's evidence. There's ample evidence. Video footage even that that prove that this prosecutor weaponized the government against the citizenry, and they did it. And Trump is trying to stop that. It's not about Donald Trump. It's about you and it's about me. It's not about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is just in the way. I do have to get on with what I was going to talk about today. It's 7:00 hour. I'm just heated. The comment section is going crazy. Be sure to like the video if you go and find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Now, before we took the break, I also was telling you guys a little bit about these 300 Jewish marchers, and this is a huge deal. This is a stain on this nation's history. What happened on Tuesday, right before this march for Israel that was taking place in Washington, D.C. I told you that about 200,000 people showed up. And really, this can just be described as deliberate and malicious. Some of the actions taken by some of the bus drivers here, it was deliberate, it was malicious, and it was anti-Semitic. So Jewish people, these Jewish marchers, they never made it to the rally in Washington, D.C. to show support for Israel. They were left stranded on the tarmac at this DC airport, and they had to return home without even exiting the plane. So here's what happened. It's not good. The Jewish Federation of Detroit and the Jewish Community Relations Council had chartered planes fly in about 300 or so Jewish protesters into DC. Okay, so they wanted to attend the rally in support of Israel. Upon their arrival to this airport, they were supposed to have several buses to transport them from the airport to the rally. But some of the bus drivers are alleged to have walked off the job once they found out who they were transporting and where they were going. Okay, so a bunch of anti-Semitic bus drivers. So David Kurtzman is his name. He's the senior director of community affairs at the Jewish Federation of Detroit. And he said that they were told on Monday night that this bus company was having troubles due to the number of drivers calling in sick. So drivers were calling in sick. They did not want to cart around Jewish people. And at that point, it was too late to cancel their flights. So they said, you know what, we're going to continue and we're going to go to Washington, D.C. And sources told David Kurtzman, the director here of the Jewish Federation, sources told him that some of the drivers refused to drive the marchers because they were Jewish. He declined to name the bus company involved, but this senator was actually among the group that arrived in D.C. on Tuesday morning. He's a Michigan state senator, Jeremy Moss, and he arrived there and he said that the group had to wait 3 hours on the tarmac before being able to board their bus. They sat on the bus for an additional 30 minutes before having to reboard the plane since there was no one to drive the bus. So they got off the plane, they got into the bus, and nobody was there to drive the bus, which begs the question, did the bus drive itself there to the airport, to the tarmac? No. We actually had bus drivers go out there, drop off the bus, and then walk off and leave the bus. So some of the marchers that arrived on the charter planes were able to squeeze onto the buses with the drivers and make it to DC. Now, there were some drivers that did not walk away from driving these Jewish people just because they were Jewish. Moss's group, the senator here out of Michigan, he never made it to the rally and had to return home to Detroit without ever leaving the airport. Groups arriving to the airport on these chartered planes are responsible for arranging their own bus transportation and must be picked up on the tarmac. So you have to arrange your bus transportation off of the tarmac. And the reason why the passengers were stranded here on the plane was because you can't deplane and hop into Ubers or taxis, because that's against the airport regulations. And it prevented a lot of people from just walking around. It prevents those regulations prevent people walking around on the tarmac and getting into taxis and into Ubers. You have to arrange a bus to come grab you. And this Jewish Federation did. But here's the thing, the bus drivers walked away because they found out that they were Jewish, and they found out where they were going, which was this DC rally. So they sat in these planes. They couldn't deplane, they couldn't get out of the plane. And then eventually they returned home without ever leaving the plane. So one of the passengers actually captured the moment where a statement was read to these stranded passengers. And I'd imagine that this came from the bus company or the airport of some kind. So here is the statement. The buses that were hired to take over 900 participants from the airport to the site of the march failed to appear, delaying the arrival of many or most in our group. Oh, this was the statement by, I believe, I'll figure this out. Hang on. I think it was by the actual Jewish Federation. We have learned that this is caused, yes, so this is by the Jewish Federation. This statement, they said that we have learned that this was caused by a deliberate and malicious walk off done by the drivers because we're Jewish and they didn't want to drive around Jewish people. Fortunately, many were able to travel to the march, and we are grateful to the drivers of those buses that arrived. Um, while we are deeply dismayed by the disgraceful action, our resolve to proudly stand with the people of Israel to condemn anti Semitism and to demand the return of every hostage held by Hamas has never been greater. This has been confirmed by the bus company of their bus drivers and what has happened. So yes, so the bus company itself actually confirmed that some of the bus drivers deliberately walked off because they did not want to drive around Jewish people. Wow. I mean, this is completely unacceptable. Imagine, if you will, if these drivers refused to transport a group of pro Hamas supporters and pro Hamas protesters. The outcry would be deafening. Okay. Teeth would be gnashed and pitchforks would be held, and hordes of agitators would fill the streets if this happened to some pro Hamas supporters. Monuments would be defaced. Actually, probably fake blood might even be smeared on the White House on the White House gates. That actually happened. The bus company would definitely have to close its doors if the script was flipped. But because it was Jewish visitors involved, and the anti-Semitism and anti-Semitism was the sentiment here, it's somehow allowed to happen, and nobody gets in trouble. The bus company is still going to be fine. And luckily, the Jewish Federation of Detroit, they weren't defeated by these actions of these bus drivers. And they said, and I love this, while we're deeply dismayed by this disgraceful action, our resolve to proudly stand in solidarity with the people of Israel and to condemn anti-Semitism and to demand the return of every hostage held by Hamas has never been greater. Good for them. Good for them. I do have to take a quick break, but when I come back, let's talk about it. Rashida Tlaib, she was actually a part of this pro-Hamas Facebook group, and that's according to a report I've got here. And when it comes to progressives, folks, it's really hard for me to tell whether they're extremely stupid or just flat out just plain evil. Sometimes I guess both can be true, but at the very least, I think many people can agree that Rashida Tlaib is very, very, very stupid. All right, we're going to come back. Find me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. This is the Morning Buzz. Like, why is that funny? Dinesh D'Souza, like Dinesh D'Souza is, an immigrant to this country, has tremendous success and has actually been a victim of the weaponization of government. If anybody has any kind of cred to talk about the police state, it would be Dinesh D'Souza. I don't know why you think it's funny that he was the producer of Police State. Just watch the movie, and there is ample evidence that he provides, including the video where Matt entered the Capitol. And uh, entered the Capitol for 12 minutes. He looked like a tourist. He stayed within the ropes. He didn't do anything. He didn't touch anything. He's on video the entire time. And they were going to prosecute him with trespassing, which he was so willing. Like, he even went to the extent, Matt, the J6er, he went to the extent of saying to his aunt at the time that he was willing to plead guilty to trespassing. And he fessed up to that. And he said, you know what? I'm going to make the best out of my time there. And I'm going to try to get people to be a part of a Bible study. And I'm willing to do this 6 months. And then the 20 years comes from that prosecutor, who admits, by the way, that those charges would have never stuck, and he just charged him with it. Why? Because he wanted to grandstand. He wanted to make he wanted to politicize the case. That's what the prosecutor said. Okay, that's what he admitted to. And yeah, I mean, what, you don't like Dinesh? I don't know what your issue is here, man, because the videos don't lie. Like, it could be produced by whoever, and I mean, the videos, and Dinesh D'Souza, the 2000 Mules, yeah, it was recalled because people, fascists, don't want that information getting out there. Have you watched Police State? Have you watched 2000 Mules? Sit down and actually watch it and try to, and I understand that you're a leftist and it's going to be hard for you to sit down and watch and listen to the rhetoric because you've been conditioned all of these years. Uh, However, just watch the video. Just watch the evidence that Dinesh D'Souza provides in these films. 2000 Mules. I mean, this isn't fake. In fact, our laws. I mean, did you know that I could go over to a Democrat's door, knock on the door, and collect all kinds of ballots? So let's say a Democrat voter, okay, here in the state of Illinois. You know what I can go do? Because it's legal now. Ballot harvesting. It wasn't legal in 2020 when this was going on. It might have been here in Illinois, but it definitely wasn't legal in some of these states. The election law just didn't allow it. Okay, ballot harvesting. I can go knock on somebody's door, being an Illinoisan, a Democrat, say they're a Democrat voter, and I have a database, right, that I can tell where everybody, or where people's voting records are at and how they voted in previous elections. I can go to this Democrat household. They've traditionally voted Democrat, and I can be a Republican, right? I'm not saying I'm going to do this, but the law kind of makes it to where it's easy. I can go there. I can collect their ballot and ballot harvest, because ballot harvesting is now legal in the state of Illinois. I can collect their ballot, and get this, I can accidentally get rid of that ballot. Okay, I can accidentally get rid of that ballot. Say I, put the ballot in my car and I got into a car accident and they were scattered all over on I-55 or whatever. Those ballots can go missing. Okay, and I cannot be charged with anything because those ballots go missing. That's what was going on in the 2020 election. People were going around harvesting Republican ballots and they were going missing. Okay. And what's even more disturbing is you had these mules, the 2000 Mules, the Democrat Party hired to go ballot harvest and to go stuff ballots into the ballot boxes, which has all been made legal now. Post 2020, you can go do this. You can go be a ballot mule, and that is legal now, because break a law, change the law, right? That's how the Democrat Party plays it. Dinesh D'Souza's conspiracy theories. He's a convicted felony. His movies are a joke. Look, I'm never going to change your mind. I very, very much hope that one day, pal, you will go and watch these films and look at the evidence. Okay, look at the primary videos. Don't listen to Dinesh if you don't like him. That's fine. look at the primary video footage and the primary sources where these mules are on tape stuffing the ballots and taking pictures. They would take pictures of the ballot boxes once they were done in order to collect their cash. Now that's where the problem is. You can't pay people to go ballot harvest. I don't believe a lot of those elections you can't pay people for their vote. But I don't know. Either way, it's immoral and it sounds weird, doesn't it? I mean, that sounds like fascism, where a party is paying people to go collect these ballots and go stuff these ballots into ballot boxes. Now, I don't know where those ballots came from. Now, if they were harvested, great. If they were uh, made up, and if they weren't actual ballots of people, then that's a problem. It should be investigated. But Dinesh D'Souza is the only one who's willing to call this out. And I mean, he's calling out what is on tape. That's my thing. I mean, if you're watching, smash the like button. We're going to be back talking a little bit about Rashida Tlaib, and I've got a few other stories here for you. Smash the like button. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. I so do appreciate you tuning in. And, we got to talk about Rashida Tlaib because she's an idiot. She's very, very stupid. And when it comes to progressives, for me, it's a little hard for me to tell whether they're extremely stupid or evil. Sometimes both can be true, I suppose. But, I mean, this is kind of crazy. The what Rashida Tlaib did. Okay. So we all know Tlaib was given a stern finger pointing last week. I think that she should be gone from the house 100%, especially given the news that I'm about ready to reveal to you. But she was censured by by her house colleague. She was given a stern finger pointing. That's really what being censured is. It's just kind of like a shame on you. I think more should be done to get rid of Rashida Tlaib because I do believe that she's trying to undermine America and that she is treasonous. And don't take my word for it. Let's look at the report done by Fox News Digital. The squad member was a part of a social media group in which its members have glamorized the Hamas terrorist attack on October 7th, the Festival of Tabernacles, and they have actually glamorized these social media users in this social media group, the war and the battle with Israel. So she's a member of this Facebook group. It's called Palestinian American Congress. That's what the Facebook group is called. Now, access to this Facebook group is denied for non-members. So you have to be a member in order to see the platform or to see what's published in this group. So, and it does not appear on the platform search engine. So you have to be invited to this group in order to be a part of this Facebook social media group. You can't even ask to join. So you have to be invited to join this group. But Fox News Digital, somehow they gained access to it. So that's pretty interesting. And I'm not surprised, folks, that Facebook allows this group to stay up. Okay, I'm not surprised that I get banned because I share an actual image from Hunter Biden's laptop where he's in a little scarf and in underwear. Okay, I got banned for 3 months on Facebook because I shared out an actual image, photograph. It was evidence from the Hunter Biden laptop. It was of him in some underwear and a pink scarf. And because I shared that out, I was banned for 3 months. Okay. So I'm not allowed to post that, but this Facebook group that glamorizes Hamas terrorists and war and battle with Israel, they're allowed to stay up. I'm not shocked by that. Okay. So Fox News, they actually reported that the group's founder, I'm going to mess up his name, Mauer Al-Qaeder, Ed Belkader is his name. I don't know. He's the group's founder, and he's a pro-Palestinian activist who has campaigned with Democrats over time. And he's campaigned with Rashida Tlaib before, this fellow. So We don't want to throw you in the sea. We want you to ride it back from where you came, a member of the group posted on October 12th, sharing a picture of an Israeli woman identified as a Holocaust survivor held hostage by Hamas. Wow. I guess the only way these people can allege that Jews are colonizers is by flat out denying the 3,000-year presence of these indigenous Jewish people in Israel. Okay, so on a November 3rd post on X, Rashida Tlaib, she said that the phrase "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free" was an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate, which is just not true. The ironic thing about this statement is that Israel is actually the only true democracy in the Middle East. And if you don't believe me, just go. Go to Israel, see what life is like there, and then why don't you go to these Palestinian territories? Like I said, Palestine is not a country. They are a bunch of ragtag activists who have created territories. It's similar to what happened here during the BLM riots with Chaz. They've created these autonomous zones, their territories, and they're terrible. Uh, People don't have water. People don't have food. They're sitting in the streets. They don't have clothes a lot of the times. These Palestinians, the Palestinian territories suck. Okay. So, and if you don't believe me, just go. Just go and live in Palestine, these Palestinian territories. Then I guarantee you'd much rather live in Israel. You want to know why? Because it's a true democracy and it's the only democracy that actually exists in the Middle East. And when Rashida Tlaib and others say "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," what they're essentially calling for is the eradication of Israel and Jewish people. Zionism, like I said, all Zionism is that you believe that Israel should be a country and it should be a Jewish state. That's all Zionism is. Okay. The Jewish people deserve a piece of land. That's it. So Tlaib, she also blamed the firebombing or the bombing of this hospital in Gaza City on Israel. We now know that that was actually a misfired rocket from a Hamas linked Islamic Jihad. So that's that's where that bombing came from. It actually came from Hamas themselves, and it wasn't Israel who bombed this hospital in Gaza. Now, according to the Washington Examiner, Tlaib, she also co-founded Black for Palestine. So Black for Palestine is an anti-Israel organization in Detroit that has expressed support and held ties to terror. Okay, so this is a radical organization. They openly express that they are anti-Israel. And there's a lot of modern day anti-Semitism being portrayed here as anti-Zionism, as they accuse Israel as being the villain. They try to say that this isn't anti-Semitism, that it's anti-Zionism. But like I said, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism because what you're saying is that you don't want Israel to exist and you don't want Israel to exist for the Jewish people. Um, so even though Israel has struggled to defend itself against these attacks from terrorists over the years, I mean, including on October 7th, I've told you multiple times that the attacks against Israel stretch back all the way to when it officially became a country again after the Roman Empire wiped them out in 70 AD. In 1948, the United Nations recognized that Israel was going to be a Jewish state. Despite all that, they just, they totally ignore that. The other side, the pro-Palestinians, the pro-Hamas supporters. So in the past, Tlaib has gone as far as to say that boycotting Israel is no different than boycotting the Nazi regime. Ironically, it was the Nazis who boycotted and sanctioned Jewish businesses. Okay, so that's what they tried to do. They tried to boycott. There's an actual movement, and they boycott, divest from Israel, and they do not purchase Israel products or Jewish products or frequent Jewish businesses, and that's what people in the Middle East do. And it's important to remember that the Nazis were very progressive. They often would project their insecurities in a backward Orwellian way as well, exactly how Tlaib does time and time again. I know what you're all thinking. I know what you're all thinking. How can somebody be so stupid and function on a daily basis, never mind being elected to Congress? Well, I think that it's literally impossible to be this dumb. It's literally impossible to be this dumb to actually believe that Palestine is a country and to believe that Zionism is, anything but understanding that Israel should be a country and it should be a Jewish state. Uh, it's impossible to be this dumb. So the only way these things would be is if you're evil. And I just don't think that these people are as incompetent as they say they are, and I think Rashida Tlaib is, either really stupid or just plain evil. I'm gonna let you think that one out, and I'll let you be the judge of it. But like I said, I just don't. I don't. She was a part of a Facebook group, folks. It was a pro Hamas Facebook group, and they said that this Jewish woman, this elderly Jewish woman who is being held hostage by Hamas right now, they said, "We don't want to throw you in the sea. We want you to ride it back to where you came." And this is what a member posted in this Facebook group. And they shared this picture of an elderly Israeli woman who identified as a Holocaust survivor, held hostage by Hamas. So I do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I've got so much to get to today. I do want to talk about Nikki Haley. She destroyed her presidential campaign because she's got plans for your social media account, and you got to know what her plans are. That's next. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. We're going to be back in just about 12 seconds with a Nikki Haley clip, which is quite incredible. She destroyed her presidential campaign in just a matter of seconds when she laid out her plans for your social media account. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about this here on the Morning Buzz next. Whew. Nikki Haley, big yikes. Big yikes. So Nikki Haley, she had a presidential campaign that rocketed up to number 2, and the key word here being had. She had a campaign that skyrocketed up to the number 2 spot right behind Ron DeSantis. Now I think it's more like Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, or not Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, maybe Nikki Haley. But yeah, I mean, she had a presidential campaign. She did pretty well after her first debate for the rhinos out there. But she is destroying her campaign. I've never liked Nikki Haley. She's neocon Nikki. Okay. She serves on, I believe, the Boeing board. Vivek Ramaswamy pointed that out. She uses the military industrial complex to line her pockets. Okay, folks. Now, Nikki Haley, she laid out this plan on Fox News. She told Fox News if she gets elected president, that she is going to want anonymous accounts on social media she wants them banned, in the name of national security. And keep those 2 words in the back of your noggin here. National security. National security. I do want to play this clip of her on Fox News discussing her plan. Here we go.
When I get into office, the first thing we have to do, social media accounts, social media companies, they have to show America their algorithms. Let us see why they're pushing what they're pushing. The second thing is every person on social media should be verified by their name. That's, first of all, it's a national security threat. When you do that, all of a sudden people have to stand by what they say, and it gets rid of the Russian bots, the Iranian bots, and the Chinese bots. And then you're going to get some civility when people know their name is next to what they say. Accountability. And they know their pastor and their family member is going to see it. It's going to help our kids, and it's going to help our country. When I get...
Whoa. Nikki Haley, stop it. Okay, well, at this point, somebody in her campaign should have clarified what the candidate meant to say. But instead, Nikki Haley, she actually went on to this podcast. It's called Ruthless Podcast, and it's hosted by a very popular anonymous account on the right. And she doubled down on this statement. So let's take a listen to this one. Here we go.
They need to verify every single person on their outlet and I want it by name. Because when
what about Smug? Does he qualify?
I've provided them with my government.
If Smug is on your driver's license, then, and look, you can put Smug in parentheses, but I want everybody's name. They need to verify every single.
So she actually went on a podcast where this guy hosts a very popular, it's on the right, it's a podcast, it's called Ruthless. It's this Ruthless podcast, and it's hosted by one of the most popular anonymous accounts on the right, Comfortably Smug. And he was sitting right there with her. Okay. So, she, I don't understand it. Now, Ron DeSantis has something to say here about it, and I really like it. He says, you know who were anonymous writers back in the day? Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, James Madison, when they wrote the Federalist Papers. They were not national security threats, nor are the many conservative Americans across the country who exercise their constitutional right to voice their opinions without the fear of being harassed or canceled by the school they go to, harassed or canceled by the school they go to or the company they work for. Okay, so Haley's proposal to ban anonymous speech online, similar to what China did it recently, actually, is super unconstitutional, and it's not a good idea. And somebody in her campaign should have clarified that before she doubled down on a different podcast So the Donald Trump, you know, he is not spoken about this as of yet. But I'm telling you folks, I don't like that idea where you have to verify with the government if you want to have a social media account. This is just one of these things where I say, pay attention, America. Okay. So I say this all of the time, pay attention, America. And typically I say pay attention America in reference to some overseas social media policies a lot of the time. Nikki Haley has not paid attention to what happens overseas when it comes to their social media policies. Canada is a big one. You can actually get in trouble on social media if you refer to somebody who is transgender by not referring to them as their preferred pronoun. The government that can control your ability to speak out anonymously isn't that far from the government that can arrest you for saying the wrong things on the internet. In the UK, they've already arrested people for social media posts. And I mean, this is terrifying. This is truly terrifying that Nikki Haley believes and thinks this way. Look, I don't like it when liberals, use anonymous accounts. I hate it, and honestly, it just kind of makes them look like an idiot. That's why liberals are anonymous on their social media because they don't want to stand by their own opinions, and I get that. That's fine. But it just kind of makes you look like an idiot. I have no issue with saying what I want to say, uh, but I do understand that people are in fear of being retaliated against, especially conservatives, and it's just unconstitutional what this woman is calling for. And you know, Nikki Haley destroyed her presidential campaign. Okay, Nikki Haley destroyed her presidential campaign by laying out this plan. I mean, it was pretty much destroyed. It didn't even really kick off, but she is just wacko. Really, truly wacko. All right, I do have to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to finish out the 7 o'clock hour. I do want to talk about how the police officers they literally were pulling apart a mob. They were far left protesters, pro Hamas supporters, and they were lunatics trying to get into the Democrat National Committee headquarters in DC last night, and the police officers literally had to pull apart this mob. All hell has broken loose. We're back next. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. I so do appreciate it. Let's address this comment. 2000 Mules is based on the film of the same name. This alleges a vast conspiracy between an unnamed left wing nonprofit groups and how they paid mules to vote to stuff vote by mail drop boxes and steal the 2020 election. Law enforcement officials and fact checkers have been thoroughly discredited have thoroughly discredited the film's accusations, and the filmmakers have declined to make key evidence for their central claims public. Okay, let's talk about this. So, if have you ever watched? Let me ask you this, Larry. This is so crucial. Have you ever watched the movie? Have you watched 2000 Mules, the film? And if you have, you wouldn't be saying this. Okay, so the evidence is the film itself. The company, the filmmakers, do not have to make do not have to decline to make key evidence for their central claims public. Um, Key evidence they have made it public in the film. That is the evidence. Okay, so in the film, they feature 2,000 or so mules uh, through video footage, through security cameras, things like that, capturing people who are stuffing ballots physically. They have hoodies. They come in the dead of night. They make it to where they don't want. They have gloves on. Okay. And they open up the ballots with gloves on, and then they take the gloves off and throw it into a trash can. I remember this very vividly. This is all on tape. So when you say that they haven't provided evidence for their central claims, bro, the entire movie is the evidence for their claim that the 2020 election was stolen via 2,000 mules. Hence the name 2,000 mules, okay? So they provide ample evidence, and the ample evidence is the film itself. Now, it's on the law enforcement to take that evidence and to figure out how they're going to prosecute those crimes and find out which crimes to charge these people with via the election law. So it's going to vary, obviously, state to state because different election laws. But nonprofit organizations, and here's how I know that this happened because here in the state of Illinois, we've legalized it. We've changed the election law to make ballot harvesting legal. Break a law, change a law. It never used to be that way, right? We never used to have it a thing where I could go. I've talked to the county clerk about this, okay? She says, right? And she's told me before, Kat, yes, you can go door to door to door and collect people's ballots, their vote by mail ballots, instead of them actually mailing them in themselves. You can actually go door to door to door. I can knock on a Democrat's door and I can say, "Hi, my name's Katrina. Have you gotten your vote by mail ballot yet? And have you filled it out?" And there are nonprofit organizations that will pay you to go do this. Okay, left wing nonprofit organizations paid people to go do this. Here's where it gets illegal, where you, as the ballot harvester, start to sift through Republican ballots. So what these nonprofit organizations were doing, they were getting Republican households, and they would go to Republican households and they'd collect these ballots, okay, and they would sift through the Republican ballots, throw those out, collect Democrat ballots, and stuff the ballot boxes with the ballots that they collected and that they wanted to have collected. Okay, so it's very simple, especially when you watch the movie. It's very clear that this is illegal activity. Now, you can't see what's in the ballots because they're in this envelope. However, what should go on, okay, is an investigation. Here you have evidence of somebody looking really, really shady in the dead of night, having gloves on, not wanting to touch the actual bucket or the drop box with their bare hand. You see them take off the gloves, and you then see the mule squat down and take a picture of the ballot of the ballot of the ballot harvest or of the drop box. Okay, uh, and you can see that this is clearly at least nefarious. Okay, so it's not on the filmmakers to go investigate these crimes. What these filmmakers are doing is saying, "Hey, we've collected a lot of video evidence for you to sift through and for you to go question these people we've caught on tape doing very odd things that look illegal." And might very well be illegal. That's up for the law enforcement to prove. They've made claims and they've backed that up by evidence, and it's up to law enforcement to actually prosecute those crimes. Woohoo! Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. Yes, we will be talking a little bit about Nikki Haley. I talked a little bit about her. She destroyed her presidential campaign. She's got this weird plan for social media. For your social media account, you're going to have to register with the state, verify with the state in the name of national security, and they're going to have to know everything about you, even though they already know everything about you, even if you have an anonymous account. This is unconstitutional. Her plan to get people to not have anonymous accounts anymore. I do want to talk about a GOP senator who almost got into a fight with a Teamsters boss. He's a union president guy. And this was an insane hearing. It was a Senate hearing. And this GOP senator, he stood up and he said that he wanted to fight this guy. And you're thinking to yourself, man, a senator acting that way? How could he? Um, Look, I sometimes you just have to have these fights. Yes, was it a breach of decorum? Probably. But wait until you hear what the Teamsters president, Sean O'Brien, was saying about this GOP senator on social media. And you're going to think very differently about this exchange when I play what was said on social media by Sean O'Brien prior to the GOP senator saying, "Hey, stand up, let's fight." Then a little bit later, what do I want to talk about? I want to talk about the 300 or so Jewish marchers who never made it to the Tuesday march, the March for Israel in Washington, D.C., because really only I can describe it as deliberate and malicious. The actions taken by these bus drivers, they were supposed to go drive these Jewish people to the rally, but they refused to. Why? Because they were Jewish. That's anti-Semitic, and it's just a shame. Police officers are literally pulling this far left mob apart last night. This is just in. Last night, police officers were pulling apart a mob of far left pro Hamas lunatics, and they were trying to pull these mob members from the door of the Democrat National Committee headquarters in DC last night. All hell broke loose. And like I said, if you're watching, you can go ahead and see this. But I'm going to play the audio for you. It is just complete chaos. Whoa. Whoa, whoa. Yeah, mostly peaceful, right? Mostly peaceful.
Shit! Someone got thrown.
And here's the thing. And I talked about this a lot yesterday. There are, oh gosh, I got to pull up these numbers, but there are so many Islamic people out there. And I'm going to say this, and people are going to be like, oh my gosh, Kat, I can't believe you said this out loud. I have a fear of the Islam ideology. And that's not an irrational fear. So a lot of people they'll say you're Islamophobic, you're transphobic, and they're trying to make you feel bad for having a fear of an ideology and or of a group of people. And I don't have a fear of people. I want to be clear about that. Don't have a fear of trans people, and I don't have a fear of Islamic people. You want to know why I don't fear people? Because God is a good God, and I don't fear people in the same way that maybe others do. However, I do fear ideologies because ideologies are dangerous. And this ideology, both trans and Islam ideologies, they breed certain things. Okay, so let's first take a look at the Islam ideology. The Islam ideology is terrifying in that there are Islamic people, and don't take my word for it. I have a study. It's a comprehensive study where there have been multiple, and a a good percentage of Islamic people who say that sometimes violence against civilians is justified. In fact, there's even some Islamic people that were in this study that say that violence against civilians is often justified. Okay, so I have statistics and statistical reasoning to have a fear of an ideology that breeds violence, that create people who support violence. I'm back. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I am going to pull up my statistics here and let you know just how many people have expressed support for violence against civilians, and they say that it's justified. So here we go. I've got the numbers. It's like 1.8 Muslims in the world. Okay. And 8% of them, according to the study, probably believe that violence against civilians is sometimes justified. This is according to a study. And I will make the references available on the Morning Buzz Facebook page. But 8% of them believe that violence against civilians is sometimes justified. Then you look further into this study, and it says 3% of Muslims often believe that violence against civilians is justified. So not just sometimes, but often justified. So that means if you take 8% of 1.8 billion Muslims with a B, that's 198 Muslims who possibly support the use of violence. Okay. And about 50 million Muslims support the use of violence sometimes. So 198 million Muslims that support the use of violence sometimes, and 50 million Muslims support the use of violence often. So let me fix that. Rearranged them. Okay, so we have a large Muslim population that believes that violence against civilians is justified in some way. Now, let's look at the numbers of Jewish people. There's approximately 16.1 million Jews and like if we were to say 100% of them supported violence against civilians, 100% of them, it would come nowhere near the 198 million Muslims who support the use of violence in some way. Okay, so 16 million, compare that to 198 million. Okay, even if 100% of them supported violence against civilians, that wouldn't even come close to the number of 198 million Muslims who support the use of violence against civilians. Now, I've tried to look for the numbers. I can't find any kind of studies that were conducted where Jewish people were asked the question, hey, would you support violence against civilians? Is it justified ever? Okay, because most likely, in the name of your religion, that's what this study really looked at. Hey, Muslim, do you support the use of violence against civilians to further the cause of your religion, Islam, your Islamic faith? And 8% of them in the study agreed or said, yes, we would support violence against civilians if it furthered the cause of Islam. Now, I haven't been able to find studies conducted where Jews were asked that same question, probably because most Jews would say, no, we don't believe in violence in this faith, okay? And we don't believe carrying out violence to further the cause of Judaism. So it's not irrational, folks. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not irrational to have a phobia of an ideology that statistically has been proven that some Muslims out there believe that it's okay to violently assault civilians if it furthers their religious beliefs. Okay. That's not irrational. An irrational fear, I would say, being afraid of kittens or being afraid of the dark. Okay. The dark has never killed anybody. The dark does not believe violence is the answer to whatever. There are irrational fears out there. You can't die by the dark. If people are afraid of spiders. It's not completely irrational to be afraid of an ideology, and they use this term Islamophobia. They try to use it as an insult and as a bad thing. It's not irrational to have a fear of an ideology. In fact, it's probably a good thing because then you can keep yourself armed and protected, and you try to keep yourself away from things that could cause you harm. Okay. I'm not saying keep yourself away from Muslims. I'm saying that you understand an ideology and you understand the statistics surrounding that ideology. Now, same thing can be said for transphobia. So, not afraid of trans people. I serve a God and he's a good God and he'll protect me against all people. Okay. I do believe that. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't fear the ideology because the ideology breeds very terrible things. Look at the suicide rate. Anything that gets someone to kill themselves at an alarming rate, as transgender ideology does, suicide rate is so high amidst that community. Any kind of ideology that gets somebody to kill themselves like that terrifies me. Okay. I don't know why they're killing themselves in that way, but we do know a common denominator, and that is the trans ideology. They subscribe to that ideology, and they wind up killing themselves. That terrifies me. That ideology has that much power where that many people can die if they subscribe to it. Okay, so that fear, transphobia, is not a bad thing. It's rational when you look at the statistics surrounding suicide amidst that community. I would not want to subscribe to that trans ideology in fear of, somehow wanting to kill myself or I wouldn't want to associate myself with those who subscribe to that ideology because that ideology breeds, obviously, suicidal thoughts. It is not an irrational thing to have fears of certain ideologies. And what people have done, they've demonized the word transphobia and Islamophobia. Having a fear of those things is not irrational. It's not a bad thing. It's justified. It's a concern. You can have concern over these ideologies and not be a bigot. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Before we took the break, I was telling you guys a little bit about Islamophobia, and I wanted to pull these numbers for you because they're important. Now, there's about 1.8 billion Muslims in the world. Now, there was a study that was conducted, and if you crunch the numbers, you can figure, based off this study, that about 8% of them believe that violence against civilians in order to further the cause of Islam is sometimes justified. Okay, there's been multiple studies where Muslims are asked, hey, do you believe that violence against civilians to further the cause of Islam, do you think that's justified? Do you think violence is justified in some cases? Muslims have answered that question, yes. In fact, 8% of them, of that 1.8 billion numbers, when you crunch the numbers, probably would say, yes, it is justified sometimes. If you figure that out, 8% of 1.8 billion Muslims who believe that violence is justified against, or violence against civilians is justified, you get about 198 million Muslims who support the use of violence against civilians. Okay, that folks, that's a big number. 198 million. Now, contrast that number to the number of Jews, okay, in America or worldwide, globally. That's 16.1 million. Of that 16.1 million, about 8 million are in Israel. Okay. No wonder they want to wipe out Israel because they'll wipe out the entire or at least half of the Jewish population in one swipe. But anyway, so that's about how many Jewish people there are globally. Even if 100% of the Jewish people believed that supporting violence or believed that violence is justified against civilians to further the cause of Judaism, even if all of them believed that, wouldn't even be close to the number of Muslims who support the use of violence against civilians, which I told you was 198. So I don't have those. I don't even have those numbers of how many Jewish people actually support violence against civilians because there hasn't been a study where a Jewish person has answered that question. Yes. Okay. Probably zero. That's why that study doesn't exist, is because when you ask a Jewish person that question, hey, do you support violence against civilians to further the cause of Judaism? They don't answer that, or they don't answer that question yes, and they haven't been able to find somebody to answer that question yes. So probably zero. But like I said, even if 100% of the Jews on the planet were in support of violence against civilians to further their religious beliefs, that would not even come close to the amount of Muslims who openly support the use of violence against civilians. So when people say you're an Islamophobe, okay, well, yeah, there's a difference between phobia and having a great concern based off of statistical analysis and based off numbers. Look, there are irrational fears out there. I think being afraid of the dark is irrational. But there are rational fears, and it's completely rational to have a fear of an ideology that breeds about 198 million Muslims saying that they support the use of violence against civilians sometimes. That's freaky. Also, the trans ideology thing, I'm going to keep saying it. You can be afraid of trans ideology, and that's okay. Okay, that's not outrageous. It's not an irrational fear. Being afraid of oranges or being afraid of bananas, probably an irrational fear because that banana is not going to grow legs and kill you. Okay. Now, the trans ideology, when you look at the transgender community, we have statistics about their suicide rates. They kill themselves at an extremely alarming rate. Okay. No other suicide rate even compares, not even to when you go back to the times of when Jewish people were in the Auschwitz camp. They were killing themselves to avoid the camps, to avoid being gassed out in these chambers. They had a pretty high suicide rate in the Holocaust times, okay? The Jewish people, to avoid Nazi Germany and the wrath of Nazis. So they'd kill themselves before they'd have to deal with any of that. That was a pretty high rate. The transgender community, oh, they kill themselves at a much, much higher rate than that. And anything that gets somebody to kill themselves at a rate in which we are seeing in the trans community concerns me greatly. Why do transgender people kill themselves at such an alarming rate? That's a scary ideology. I fear the trans ideology. I fear the Islam ideology. Why? Because statistics prove that Islam, not a majority, but a good portion, 8% of this 1.8 billion, that's a lot of numbers, or that's a lot of people, Islamic people who say that they support the use of violence against civilians. That's 198 people. Then you look at the suicide statistics, that's concerning. So when people say you're an Islamophobe, you're a transphobe, I would shoot back at them and say, is it irrational to fear these numbers and these statistics? Is it irrational to have this fear? Most people, I mean, you could be afraid of the dark. You could be afraid of heights. Heights never killed anybody, right? And heights doesn't have the suicide statistics that the trans ideology's got. All right. So I do have to switch gears here. I do want to talk about this a little bit today. GOP senator standing up to try to fight this Teamster boss in the Senate hearing. So Kevin McCarthy, he was accused this week, and he said, I guess he elbowed somebody in the hallway. Tim Burchett, he was a representative in the hallway. He either elbowed somebody, shoved somebody, punched this guy in the face, or punched him in the kidney. I don't know, because the mainstream media sucks and I can't tell what happened based off of their reporting, because everybody reports it differently. So I don't know why that is. Probably just because journalism are suck and nobody was there and they try to get clicks. I mean, that's really what this is about. And nobody was there. There was no video. So I don't even know if it happened. Okay. But if you thought that was a breach of decorum, this shove, this scuffle, this elbow accusation in the hallway this week, just listen to this. Wait till you hear about this. Look, when someone says anytime, any place, you would think that means anytime and any place. But of course, we can't expect the Teamsters president, Sean O'Brien, to put his money where his mouth is. There was a physical altercation that almost broke out in this Senate committee hearing as this GOP senator, his name is Mark Wayne Mullen, he stood up. He was actually a former MMA fighter, by the way, and he almost fought O'Brien. And you're probably thinking to yourself, man, a senator acting in such a way, that's a breach of decorum. No, this GOP lawmaker, he has been harassed, trash talked for several months on social media by this guy. Now, watch this. If you're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble, you can watch it. If not, audio's good. Bernie Sanders actually tries to get in the middle of this thing and tries to, calm the tension. It's a hilarious bit of audio. Here we go. Let's take a listen.
Like he's self-made. Sir, I wish he was in the truck with me when I was building my plumbing company. Myself and my wife was running the office, because I sure remember working pretty hard and long hours. Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. You want to run your mouth? We can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big
No,
guy.
no, stop it.
Is that your
All right.
solution every
Hold it. No, sit down. Sit down. Okay. You're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Actively.
Oh, okay. Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond? Mr.
Hold
Chairman?
it.
Hold it.
If we can, no,
This is
I
what
am
he
right.
said.
I'm sorry.
This is
Hold
what he
it.
said.
You'll have your time.
Okay.
Can I respond?
Oh, no, you can't. This is a hearing.
Oh, Bernie. So Bernie gets up there and he's trying so hard to just get the tensions to calm down. He's trying to keep the peace. And look, I've covered their bickering before in the past, and just some background, the two went at it in March earlier this year at another hearing over O'Brien's salary and how it compared to those who are union members. That of his union members, he gets paid an exorbitant amount in comparison to these union members. And Sanders actually had to intervene in that argument as well. Mullen, he read a series of tweets that O'Brien was tweeting out, and look, O'Brien was the guy who was running his mouth and challenging Mullen on social media to a fight. Okay, so look, the hostilities are going to continue. Sometimes we just need to have these fights. I would actually tune into Senate committee hearings if these people were willing to fight each other over their convictions. Yeah, heck yeah, I would. Men used to have such convictions where they would be willing to fight for those convictions, where they would be willing to fight for their beliefs. Now, I'm not saying to go back to Andrew Jackson times where Andrew Jackson was challenging everybody to a duel and killing men over their convictions, but that happened in US history. Okay, I'm not saying that we should go back. We've modernized a bit. I think we can resolve our issues, but maybe sometimes resolving your issues with a few punches, yeah, not killing each other, but with a few punches, yeah, I could see that. 100%. Actually, a little story about Andrew Jackson. Love this guy. He's hilarious. I think possibly one of my favorite presidents. Um, he would challenge people to duels all the time. He was an alpha male, and he would kill people for his convictions and for his beliefs. That's just facts, okay? And he's one of my favorite presidents because he's alpha male, not for that reason, okay? We shouldn't kill people just because we believe in something, okay? That's not what I'm saying. But here's what happened. It was kind of funny. This guy, he almost got assassinated, Andrew Jackson, the US president, by this guy, and he actually brought two guns to go kill Andrew Jackson, this assassin. He wanted to assassinate the president. So he brought one gun, the gun misfired. He brought out the second gun, that gun misfired. Okay. And Andrew Jackson takes out the cane and beats the guy with the cane. And after that, what he did, he put up a statue right outside of that building where this guy almost attempted to assassinate him. He put up a statue of himself. Okay. So that's what we used to have in America. I'm not saying we should go back. However, if this guy, O'Brien, wants to be a tough guy and bring out all this tough guy talk on social media, then he needs to be willing to. I mean, anytime, any place means anytime, any place. If you want to talk like this and run your mouth, be a consenting adult, and you asked for it, right? I mean, you asked for it. I do have to take a break, but when we come back, speaking about fighting, there was a female boxer who refused. She did not want to fight a transgender opponent. She's a Canadian boxer. And good for her. She stood up and she said, "No, I'm not going to let a guy punch me in the face." She said, "No, I'm just not going to do that." So good for her. We're going to talk about that story here on the other side because it gets kind of wild. Here next on Cities 92.9. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to the Morning Buzz. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. We're back, and we're talking about Katia Bisonet, and she was set to fight in the 2023 Golden Glove Championship. Now, an hour before her fight, she learned that her opponent was born a he, and that she was going to be competing against a man in this championship. And this female boxer withdrew from the championship in Quebec, Canada, after learning that she was set to fight this guy. So good for her. I'm going to be chatting a little bit about it. If you're watching, like I said, smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's a big one. Just subscribe if you want more content, and visit cities929.com. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. Grab a chair, pull up a chair, sit down, grab a cup of coffee. Let's sit. Let's have a conversation at the breakfast table. Get the kids, gather around. Sports, okay, all of sports, where biology gives men who went through puberty as males an advantage over women. Okay. Out of all of the sports, I think that combat sports is probably top of the list when it comes to men dominating in this sport. And look, men, you get it. You go through puberty, you get this muscle definition. Women don't go through that. When they go through puberty, they don't get muscle definition. They don't gain muscle just by existing, right? Puberty, testosterone, it's a crazy thing. And I've got to tell you about this boxer, and how she stepped away from a championship in Quebec, Canada. So you and I would both say that watching some dude punch a girl in the face is wrong. Yet, if that dude identifies as a girl, somehow we're supposed to accept it because it's in the name of equality, tolerance, and all of that gay stuff. One female Canadian boxer took a stand, and she said that, no, I am not going to allow a man to punch me in my face. That is not going to happen. And her name is Katia Bisonet. And it was the 2023 Golden Glove Championship in Canada, Quebec. And just an hour before she was supposed to fight this person, she found out that her opponent was actually born a he, and he's competing as a she now. So Katia, she told Ruddux News that she wasn't ready. She was ready to go up until an hour before the fight, when her manager found out via text message that her female opponent, was not actually born that way. So who is this female opponent? Well, his name is Maya. I don't know his man name. I can't. There's not much information on him. He had no history of fighting in Canada. Actually, he did have a history of fighting in Australia. So Maya is his name, and he's Australian, but he moved to Canada about a couple of years ago. The sick part of all of this, Maya would have boxed as a man in Australia. Okay. So he moved to Canada. This is really, truly what I believe. He moved to Canada to fight women and to punch women in the face. Disturbing. Bisonet, Katia, the woman who walked away from the championship, she put her safety first, and she dropped out of this. And she actually talks about a study, and this is why she left the match, the boxing match. Now, she says, according to the study, a male blow is 163% more impactful than a woman's could ever be. And that's even adjusted for weight. Okay, so she referred to this 2020 study. It's based off strength. It was actually published by researchers out of the University of Utah. And the group studied the weakest man remains physically superior to the strongest woman. That's what they found out. And women shouldn't have to bear the physical and the psychological risks brought by a man's decisions regarding his own personal life and his own identity. Keep men out of female sports. Now, the controversy over men competing against women started in combat sports actually long before there was a Leah Thomas and this litany of track stars trying to steal opportunities away from girls. There was actually Fallon Fox, and he was destroying women's orbital bones. So orbital bones, those are like your cheekbones. He was destroying their bones. When you have a hormonal profile and the capabilities of a man, plus you've got this bone density and overall your muscle structure is just intense, and you've built that up over a lifetime of just simply being a man. You don't have to do you don't have to even hit the gym, guys, because your body just produces muscle mass in a much different way than women. So it gives you a ton of different advantages over girls in fighting. Trans or not, guys fighting girls, it's not a competition. It's an assault. Men should not hit women. We all grew up with this, right? We all grew up with that. So Katia Bessonette, this Canadian fighter, she said that, she was worried about her well-being, like actually worried. And what's really messed up about all of this, she trained and she dedicated her life to become a fighting champion to get there. And she was the one who pulled out of all of this. And the messed up part about it, I told you, it was a text message that came to her manager an hour before she was supposed to step into this ring with this dude. And imagine if they didn't get that text message. She gets out there in the ring, she starts fighting this man, and she realizes, man, this man is not a man at all. This woman isn't a woman at all. This woman's a man, and she's in the middle of fighting this guy, and then her orbital bone gets crushed. So yeah, good on her for walking away. More women need to walk away from this. Yesterday, I talked about a pool player. She was a female pool player, and she gets to this championship, and she walked away from the pool table and said, you know what? No, I'm not doing this. And she walked away. More women need to be doing that. Okay. I do have to take another quick break, but you can see me live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Now, one thing that I want to do is chat a little bit about what happened to about 300 Jewish people just a couple of days ago. It was on Tuesday morning, where these planes arrived and these bus drivers refused to drive some Jewish people over to the rally in D.C., where 200,000 people gathered to support Israel in this, March for Israel protest that happened in Washington, D.C. And these bus drivers, I mean, what can only be described as malicious and deliberate, these actions of these bus drivers will go down in history as a stain, on in American history. I'll be right back. Hey, good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. That would be great, a great, great, great help to me. Go ahead, smash the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's Cat Peterson 929. Now, the choice is between fascism and democracy. No, Larry, we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. I would imagine if I asked you, Larry, um, uh, uh, Larry, do you believe in the Constitution? Do you think that the Constitution is a good thing? And actually, you're wrong again. So, the people who are fighting against the practice of democracy is actually the left. So I've talked extensively on this program about The Atlantic, and go look this up for yourself. The Atlantic, the New York Times, they've published headlines that say elections are bad for democracy. Do we even need elections anymore? These are the headlines that our mainstream media and the media is publishing, and they're left-leaning, definitely left-leaning publications. So the left are actually the ones who are calling for an election, for no election. Okay. Now I've told you my theory here. It's not a conspiracy theory, but it's a theory that we are closely monitoring what's going on in Ukraine. So Ukraine recently came out with this, we're not going to have a 2024 election. Okay, so Ukraine is undemocratic. It's an undemocratic country. They do not partake in democratic processes. We have an election, and it's kind of like a democratic process. Okay, we're not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic where we elect representatives to represent us and to take an oath of office and to uphold the Constitution. Okay, we are a constitutional republic. Democracy is like mob rule, where the majority gets the say. Okay, so we are a constitutional republic. And let me get back to Ukraine here. So they're no longer having their 2024 election. President Zelensky has said that they're not going to hold a 2024 election. And I do believe that America is watching closely, and we might mimic what's going on over in Ukraine if it goes well for President Zelensky. That, my friends, is undemocratic. If you want to say it's a difference between fascism and democracy, democracy is not what we want. We do want to continue our democratic process, which is how we conduct our elections. But the left has called for that to no longer be a thing. Elections. They don't want elections anymore. Okay. Now, that is the very definition of fascism. Okay. Now, it's not Donald Trump who's calling for no elections. It's not people on the right who are calling for no elections. It's those on the left who are calling for no elections and for elections to be no longer. In fact, they've tried to change our election process by things like super delegates. If you look at the Democrat Party, they have something called super delegates where the people don't even get to choose their primary candidates. So notice how the Republicans are the only ones who have primary debates. And the reason for that is because the people actually get a say. They don't have these things called super delegates, at least not right now. They're trying to in the RNC, which is terrifying. But that's why Bernie Sanders was not allowed to be the primary pick to be the nominee, is because those super delegates wanted Hillary. Okay. And that is the most undemocratic thing that I could possibly think of. The people wanted Bernie. And Larry, I know you're a Dem and I know you love Democrats. That's okay. But your own party, you need to understand that they are the fascists. Okay. They won't even allow you to pick your primary candidate, the nominee. They don't let you vote in primaries. Okay. That's just how the process works. They have super delegates, Republicans don't. And if you don't believe me, Larry, tell me why Joe Biden, there are Democrats running against Joe Biden in this presidential race right now. Gavin Newsom, he's running a shadow campaign, which is odd. But tell me why they don't host Democrat primary debates. The reason why is because they know who their nominee is going to be. And even that process of selecting the nominee has been destroyed by the Democrat Party because they are in favor of what is called fascism, and they don't want people weighing in on who gets to be the nominee. They pick the nominee, the people at the top. Okay, the people don't get to pick the nominee. And yeah, that's straight up. That's what it is. And the people on the left have called for things like mail-in ballots, for things like choice voting systems. They are actively trying to change this democratic process in which we elect our officials to represent us and to represent our constitutional republic. The GOP has now dropped any pretense of caring about the Constitution or the principles upon which the United States was founded. Okay, Larry, pal. The GOP has dropped the pretense of caring about the Constitution. I point you to the Second Amendment. What party is attacking the Second Amendment? The Constitution is pretty clear. It says shall not be infringed. Right now, we've got Democrats constantly infringing on the Second Amendment. Shall not be infringed is pretty clear to me. And the party that is literally trying to just toss that aside is the Democrat Party. You're confused, my friend. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Just going to read some of your comments here. Thanks so much for texting in at 309-451-9299. You can also comment on the YouTube stream, Facebook stream. We've also got Rumble, Twitter. You can go there and check it out. I highly suggest you do. Kat Peterson 929 is where you can subscribe. And pull up a chair. Let's have a conversation. Now, Larry, I do want to read one of his comments here. This is interesting. It says, the choice is between fascism and democracy. Larry, wrong. We are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic where we, through a democratic process, via an election, we elect representatives to represent us uh, and the Constitution. They take an oath. Once you are an elected official, you take an oath of office, and you say, "Yes, I swear to uphold the Constitution and um, create laws or." Uh, follow the laws in which the Constitution. So Larry then goes on and he says the GOP has dropped any pretense of caring about the Constitution or the principles upon which the United States was founded. So this is the the left. They are against the democratic process which we have to represent individuals to represent us and the Constitution, the constitutional republic. How do I know that? Go look at the Atlantic headlines. Go look at the New York Times. They print headlines like, do elections really matter? Should we even have elections? Elections are bad for democracy. These are left wing organizations who constantly print these headlines calling for the end of elections here in the United States. Then you look over at Ukraine, and we have Democrats who are constantly pushing to support an undemocratic country, and not even a NATO country, Ukraine. Ukraine has come out recently and said that they are no longer holding a 2024 election. You want my belief on it? I think that America is watching closely what's going on in Ukraine when it comes to this election, and they're thinking that they're going to be able to pull off the same thing Ukraine is doing and not hold an election in 2024. I will continue to swear by this. I do not think we're going to have an election in 2024. I think that they're going to say that elections are bad for democracy, and we're just not going to have one. And Joe Biden or Gavin Newsom, they're just going to roll on in over into a new term without an election being held. And that, my friends, is fascism. When you get rid of elections, that is fascism. And the party that is for getting rid of elections, look at who's pushing for things like mail-in ballots, pushing for things like non-citizens voting in our elections, voting in American elections. They are pushing things like ranked choice voting. These are all attacks on the current process in which we elect representatives. Okay, so that is fascism. They are against elections. They don't like them. And how do I know that? They've said it out loud. Okay, the Atlantic, New York Times, go look at those headlines and then come back to me and say that the left is pro-elections. They're not pro-elections. Now, to this Constitution point, the GOP has dropped any pretense of caring about the Constitution or principles upon which the United States was founded. Look no further than the Second Amendment. I don't think I really have to say much more than that. Okay, the Second Amendment, it says shall not be infringed. Who infringes on that Second Amendment right daily, day in, day out? Who attacks it? It's the Democrat Party. So, yeah, I do want to move on. Let's talk about the Jewish Federation of Detroit and the Jewish Community Relations Council, how they flew in to DC and they wanted to go to this rally. So 300 or so Jewish marchers, they never made it to the Tuesday rally. I talked about this rally where over 200,000 people showed up to show support for Israel. Okay, now what I can only describe as deliberate and malicious, these actions some bus drivers took that day that left people stranded on the tarmac at this Washington, D.C. airport, and they had to return home return home without even exiting the plane. So what happened? It's not good. Here's what happened. Like I said, the Jewish Federation of Detroit, the Jewish Community Relations Council, they took in planes, chartered planes. They flew in about 300 or so Jewish protesters to go to this rally and to attend the rally in support of Israel. Upon their arrival to the airport, they were supposed to take several buses, and those buses were supposed to transport them to the rally. But some of the bus drivers are alleged to have walked off the job once they found out that they were going to be transporting Jewish people. Big yikes. That's a stain on American history. So 300 Jewish people stranded because these bus drivers said that they didn't want to transport Jewish people. So David Kurtzman, he's the senior director of community affairs at the Jewish Federation of Detroit, and he said that he called on Monday the bus company, and the bus company did tell him that they were having troubles finding enough drivers to drive them out of the airport to the rally. They were having a hard time finding enough bus drivers. Now, it was too late for them to cancel the chartered flights into DC, so they went anyway, knowing that there probably weren't going to be enough buses to get everybody there. But Kurtzman was told, some sources told him, that the bus drivers who were there refused to drive the members and drive the marchers because they were Jewish. And Kurtzman, he refused to name the bus company involved. But who was amidst these people? Michigan State Senator Jeremy Moss. He was a part of this group that arrived in DC on Tuesday morning. And he said that the group was there waiting 3 hours on the tarmac before they were able to board their bus. But they sat on the bus for an additional 30 minutes. But then they had to go reboard the plane because nobody was there to drive the bus, which begs the question, did the bus drive itself to the airport and on the tarmac? No, somebody drove it there. Some of the marchers arrived on these charter planes, were able to squeeze onto buses, and there were some drivers who made it out to DC and dropped them off at the rally. Now, Senator Moss, Jeremy Moss from Michigan, he said that his group never made it to the rally and they had to return to Detroit without ever leaving the airport, which is wild. They never left the airport. They had to sit there on the tarmac. You're probably wondering why they'd sit on the tarmac. Why didn't they just get up and get Ubers or taxis? Well, because of regulations, it prevented a lot of people from these regulations prevent people from walking around on the tarmac. And you can't do that. You can't have taxis or Ubers come and pick you up. They have to be buses from a bus company that gets you that gets you off of the tarmac. So the passengers were stranded, and there was a statement that the Jewish Federation released, and it was read to those who were on the who were read this to the passengers who were on the plane. On the planes. So here's the statement. They said the buses that we hired were supposed to take over 900 participants from the airport to the site of the march, but they failed to appear, the buses that we hired, delaying the arrival of many or most in our group. We have learned that this was caused by a deliberate and malicious walk-off by the drivers. So the bus drivers walked off, they left their buses there. Fortunately, many were able to travel to the march, and we are grateful to the drivers who did drive their buses and for the buses that actually arrived to the tarmac. We are deeply dismayed by the disgraceful action, and our resolve, though, to proudly stand with the people of Israel to condemn anti-Semitism and to demand the return of these hostages over in Hamas, or held by Hamas, has never been greater. Our resolve has never been greater. That's what they said in this statement. And look, they even came out in the statement. They said that the bus company confirmed that the drivers did what they did and said what they said. We're not going to drive Jewish people. That's what these bus drivers said. And they left like 300 plus Jewish people over there. I mean, it goes without saying that this is completely unacceptable. This is unacceptable. Imagine, if you will, play with me. Just play a second play this out with me. Imagine if the drivers refused to transport pro-Hamas protesters to this rally. The outcry would be deafening. Teeth would be gnashing. Pitchforks would be held up. There would be hordes of agitators filling the streets. Monuments would be defaced. Fake blood might even wind up on the gates, smeared on the gates of the White House. That happened, by the way. The bus company would definitely close its doors, okay, if this was switched around, if these were pro-Hamas supporters, okay? But because they were Jewish visitors involved, because they were Jewish visitors and anti-Semitism was the sentiment here, it somehow was allowed to happen where these bus drivers were just able to walk off. And I love what they said in that statement. They said, look, while we're deeply dismayed by this disgraceful action taken by these bus drivers, we're going to stand with our people. We're going to stand with the people of Israel. We're going to condemn anti-Semitism no matter what. And we're going to demand every hostage be released by Hamas, held by Hamas. We want them to be released. So I love it. I love that their spirit was not broken just because these bus drivers acted in this way. I do have to take a quick break, but we're going to wrap up the show on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. I am live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. I'm going to continue our conversation there. So subscribe to the channel. That's Kat Peterson 929. Ooh, good morning. Thanks so much. So, I love this. This is fun, Larry. I enjoy you watching. If pro-Trump supporters felt personally attacked because because President Biden got on television and said fascism is bad, authoritarianism is bad, political violence is bad, and that we should all put the country over any political party, it says a whole lot more about pro-Trump supporters than the president you're mad at. So I don't understand. It's not I feel personally attacked. Well, Larry, Joe Biden has said MAGA Republicans are fascists. I mean, I'll pull up his red sermon. Okay, hold on. Let me look this up. I'm gonna look this up. I mean, he's not even, but he does mention Trump supporters. Okay, so you said if Trump supporters felt personally attacked because he goes on television and says fascism is bad, he says Trump supporters are fascists. Okay, so he doesn't just say fascism is bad. He says that Trump supporters are fascists and that fascism is bad. Okay, so it's not like President Joe Biden is out there just saying fascism is bad. He's saying that pro-Trump supporters are bad and that they are fascist. Okay, that's why Trump supporters are upset with President Joe Biden. It's because he actually says it. He says MAGA Republicans. I think that's the terminology he uses, but those are Trump supporters, right? Make America great again. Republicans, those are people who voted for Donald Trump and who subscribe to the America First agenda. He calls them MAGA. He doesn't come out and say Trump supporters, but he calls them MAGA Republicans. And that is a personal attack. Yes, because he is calling you out if you voted for Donald Trump, and he's saying that you are a fascist if you voted for Donald Trump, practically. So I'm going to play it for you, Larry, when I come back, because I want to show you this evidence. I want to show you this evidence where he constantly goes after where he is constantly going after MAGA Republicans, and he personally goes after people who voted for Donald Trump. If you're watching, go ahead, smash that like button. We're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. Oh boy. Sometimes I'll just tell you, no, it gets tiring trying to school these libs, right? Good morning. This is the morning buzz. So here we have it. Texter texting in. He says, if pro-Trump supporters felt personally attacked because because the president Joe Biden got on television and said fascism is bad, authoritarianism is bad, political violence is bad, and that we should put an end or should all put the country over any political party. It says a whole lot more about Trump supporters than the president you are mad at. Well, your whole point here, you said that Trump supporters they felt personally attacked because President Joe Biden got on TV and said fascism is bad. Well, it's because he personally attacked them. He named Trump supporters and said that they were a great threat to democracy. Here we go.
Threat. It's a threat to the brick and mortar of our democratic institutions. But it's also a threat to the character of our nation.
Former President Donald Trump's Make America Great Again campaign message still resonating with GOP voters, despite facing 4 separate criminal indictments.
So there you have it. I mean, that was a clip from President Joe Biden. He says MAGA Republicans are the biggest threat to democracy. So he's not calling out just fascism. Okay. He's not saying, oh, it's just fascism that's bad. It's just authoritarianism that's bad. It's just political violence that's bad. No, he says that MAGA Republicans are bad. He says that MAGA Republicans are authoritarian, and thereby he's personally attacking pro-Trump supporters. They're not feeling personally attacked. They are personally attacked by the commander-in-chief, President Joe Biden, daily. Okay. Well, you guys have a great rest of your day. That's going to do it for us here on Cities 92.9. I'll see you tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Up next after me, it's Glenn Beck, Dan Bongino, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Markley Van Camp, and Robbins. You guys won't want to miss it.